What's going on, people? So got the box of shoes in a couple hours ago and all. I mean, I was out when it happened, but they were here waiting on me for when I did get home and stuff. So now I'm gonna cut on into this thing, open these up, talk about the last ones I picked up a little bit because it kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes it just works that way. Maybe bring out these ones down here on the floor, which is basically like not last year's model, but the 2024 model. So I guess they're on like one of those like year and a half ish type product cycles, which the Super Blast 2, I believe, is moving to an 18-month cycle. I believe that's what I heard from ASICS because they have the Mega Blast and something else, another blast. They have two blast shoes coming around, right? So they don't want all the products to be like just kind of bumping up against each other as far as release dates go. So yeah, that's something to look forward to, at least to me. I mean, I liked the Super Blast. Wasn't a huge fan of the Nova Blast, but it works out fine for what it is, right? If you saw the reviews, I never talked down on it. I just never really praised it either. But there's a million running shoes out there, depending on your style, your build. Some stuff is just going to be better for you. All right, we'll start with this because it's here, right? So, kicking things off, got this little shirt in here. You saw me open this box, right? With ASICS, like if I order like a single pair of shoes, they always just ship it in a bag, and I'm not thrilled about that. So I tried when I'm remembering, I try to like order more than one thing so that way they put it in a box and so that way stuff arrives in like nice and neat condition. Because for me, I keep the stuff in the boxes, right? Which means I then have to stack these boxes and all that stuff. And if the structural integrity comes into question, then everything comes into question, right? Including my safety as these boxes tumble down upon me. So anyways, let's go ahead and turn this thing around, right? So you can't really see that. Let's move this thing. Why do they do this like that? That's just kind of weird to me. But anyway, so there we go. So it's one of those ASICS singlets, right? They do a lot of these things. That kind of makes it a little bit wider so you can see more of it. Yeah, they do a lot of these things every so often. This one is obviously made for like the metaspeed colorway and all that stuff, right? So you got a little bit of that purple down there. Yeah, it's kind of purple. It looked blue kind of in like the pictures, but then I'm like, well, it's got to be purple, right? And then you got some of that reddish, pinkish sort of color. It's flash red according to like the details on the website. So that thing came in at $100. 90? Oh, between 90 and $100. And I was like, what is this? This thing better be magic. I don't think it is. I think it's just nice. So the usual ones, like the other metaspeed singlets, are 70, I believe. So yeah, whatever. So let's go ahead and let me show you the side of the box here real quick in case you want to see that. There'll be a picture in the actual review, but for now, that's just going to have to suffice. So let's go ahead, see how things are looking, right? I assume they'll look exactly like the pair of shoes I bought the other day, for the most part, but with a slightly different look on the midsole, because that's how it worked last year, right? Well, it was earlier this year when I got the 2024s. I was way late to the party on that. But in 2024, I was not really running a whole lot like I do now. And even still, we'll get into that later. So anyways, this is the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Tokyo edition, right? But yes, you may have seen that. I did put that in the title because I don't like to have misleading titles where it's like, is this the best shoe ever? And I'm holding up like just a black box and you can't tell what's in it. It's like, no, I want you to know what you're getting into because maybe you don't care. You know what I'm saying? So if I give you the details up front, you can save some time and go do something else with your day. Maybe watch some Darkwing Duck. I don't know. Anyway, so let's go ahead, look at these things real quick, make sure everything's fine. Luckily, they're still very much in stock. So if there was a problem, a little exchange or whatever, should be pretty easy to knock out. And things are looking good, so we can move on into it. I'll introduce these again real quick, just in case you missed it. This right here, ASICS, Metaspeed, Sky, Tokyo, Flash Red. Now let's jump into it. Across the bottom, this thing looks very much like the last one did, right? This is going to be the edge. It does have a slightly different color to it. It's black versus the red, right? So that kind of gives you some sort of idea that something different has happened. Moving on up here to the midsole, though. The midsole, at a first glance, is going to look very similar, right? And even looking at these right here, like, yeah, it's super similar, but the difference being the plate placement, right? So on the sky, the plate is above and or kind of like higher, right? As far as like where the foam is and all that stuff. And then the edge, it's going to be a little bit lower. So you look at the edge here, right? See how it's kind of like dips down a little bit more, whereas on the sky, it's a little bit higher, right? It's a very like subtle thing to see in like these poorly illustrated pictures or whatever here, because like this camera does not do the greatest job. But you can kind of tell it because it's got like the white part, and then it's got the like an off-white sort of part. So there's kind of like your break and whatnot, right? But otherwise, things are very basically the same. You know, it's not a whole lot to see there. But it is a nice upper, right? You can see all the way through there. You can see all that. Let's take this white stuff out of there so you can see like straight on into there and all that stuff, right? Super breathable and all. So that's pretty cool. Moving along past that, I mean, again, it's all very much the same as you just saw it. Maybe you saw it, I don't know. The edges and all that, right? Very much the same thing going on. So let's bring those back up real quick. As you see there, right? Again, the sky over here, edge over here. Not a whole lot really different there. Like if you're going for it, I mean, it's you can see it, sure, like the edge in the sky. But as far as like the upper goes, and it was very much the same thing last year. But anyway, so one thing you do have it labeled on the tongue here. So you got there. Well, let me move some of these letters, some of these laces out of the way. So metaspeed sky. The other one, same sort of deal, but it says edge. And you got the laces like I was talking about with the Hyperions, where they stay in place pretty well. I'm a fan of that. But otherwise, that's pretty much what's going on here. It's a very straight representation of this one, right? Like almost a 1-to-1, again, minus if you like look in there real close like. Which means they're probably going to fit the same because last year they did, right? But I do need to put this on real quick. And I am wearing I'm not wearing my normal like running style socks, whatever. So this is probably going to be just a little bit snug because this isn't like the biggest shoe. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of a slim sort of build. A lot of those speed type shoes can have that sort of feel to them. But to me, the true to size thing worked out last time. I'm sure it'll work out this time. I just don't see why it wouldn't. Slipping that thing on, and everything is what I want it to be. So that's pretty cool. One thing that I will make note of right now, though, sometimes when I try shoes on and I'm like sitting, it's not always the best representation of like how things are going to feel because like the heel drop can definitely be a factor. And this, it is a 5, right? So it's like 39.5 back here, 34.5 in the front, right? And that's for both pair, right? So standing and all that stuff, right? It should feel pretty much the same as far as like just being kind of flat and level across the board. It was an issue. It's an issue like of things like say what's that Nike shoe? The Air Max DN, right? Because that thing has quite the drop. I don't know what it is. It feels like it's like a foot. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like very high in the back. But that's kind of what they were going for. They wanted the extra cushioning and all that stuff. They are comfortable. I'm not going to talk down on it. I'm just saying when you go from certain other things to wearing that, it's not ideal. It definitely is not. But I keep a pair by the door because I do wear them from time to time along with the Asics Gel Kinetic Fluent. That's one of my other daily shoes. And nowadays, the Saucony ProGrid Triumph 4. That has recently been added into the daily wear rotation because I have those Endorphin Elite 2s. They kind of suck a whole lot for just wearing in normal circumstances. Sizing wise, getting this thing back on track. Yeah, I said they were probably going to be fine, true to size. These are fine. And they, even with like the extra room, I can tell like once honestly, I could wear these socks and be just fine, but I'll be wearing, you know, like Balegas or Features or something, one of those like ultralight type things. And so, because they just feel better, you know, they're like compression type socks or whatever. So I'll just be wearing those. Things will feel very much like they did last time. So one other thing to mention, because I feel like it's going to be relevant, I guess. Oh, the weight of these, before I get into it. The weight of these, it's a high five as far as like ounces go. It's like 5.9 or something like that for a size 9 is what they said. I'm a size 9.5, so yeah, seems about right. And I mean, these things are super light. I do like that piece of it. But anyways, let's go ahead and do a quick look at the last year or the last model. I keep saying last year. The last model and these. So this is the Sky, right? This is last year's. We're just gonna stick with it. But this is last year's Sky. Yeah, just gonna go on and be wrong. So build wise and all that stuff, again, pretty similar, right? This one obviously has like the flat foam leaf. That's like the biggest thing, right? It's not all that. That's gotta be, if the labeling is right, that's gonna be like the lower layer, and then the upper layer is gonna be Turbo Plus, I believe, because that's the same thing this was, right? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's like the upper layer is the Turbo Plus, the lower layer is the Leaf, and the Leaf is obviously much like with Boost or like with the DNA thing that Brooks does every year. It's just a little, well, not every year, but whenever they do their next iteration, it's just better. It's lighter, it's faster, it's bouncier, it's more energy, better for the environment, all that stuff every year, every time. So, anyways, one thing about these though, and this is ASIC stats, not my own, they did say on the webpage that the Sky energy return is like greater than here, right? And that's kind of where like the new foam comes in. So it's not as much as the Edge. So this is like an 18% boost over this one as far as, energy return. So you got that going for yourself on account of this whole leap system. So that's kind of all right. But otherwise, like, again, just kind of getting in there. The look hasn't really changed. It's really just going to be what's going on in the shoe, which is pretty good because these worked out very well by a lot of people's standards. I haven't worn these in any races or anything yet, just around the tracks and everything, but so far so good. And now switching things over here, we'll do this one and this one. So going over to the Edge, right? Again, this being the Edge of the current one, this being the previous one. So again, very much a similar sort of thing, right? The plate dips down a little bit lower in the front. That's why they look basically the same. Stitching wise, like, and all that stuff. I mean, this one has like a little like bit across there. It kind of reminds me of the Ultra Boost 19, which I am a huge fan of those. I'm realizing that because I say that a lot when I like am referring to things and comparing stuff. But either way, so yeah, a lot of the same sort of things going on here. The difference though between the Edge versus the Sky for the current models, right, is going to be that let's see, the Edge here actually has a higher energy return over last year than the Sky did. So like I was saying, the Sky was like 18. Let's see, that's this one, right? The Sky was like 18% better, whereas the Edge is going to be 21% better, right? So is that going to make like a real world difference? I question it, like that's always a thing. Because even back in my, like, when I was big on like the PC building and all that stuff, digging deep at like all the hardware stats, yeah, there's always going to be something better than something else. But are you going to notice outside of these little benchmarks? You sit there, watch 3D Mark all day, like, but what are you going to see when you're playing some Quake or something, right? Anyways, so moving on past that though, right? Yeah, it is better. I'll get that whole thing figured out at some point. For right now, though, I don't know when that's going to be because I'm still kind of getting over some blood donation stuff I did. So, when you have less blood, you have kind of like less oxygen type stuff flowing through you. Yeah, and you need that, right? So, some of these recent events I've done have not felt the greatest. So, if I'm going out there like going for speed or something, I mean, I guess there's the whole aerobic anaerobic thing, but either way, it's not going to feel great overall, especially not when it's over. So I'm not sure when I'll get back into doing some of these full-on tests and whatnot, but I'm probably going to wait till at least the Ray comes around anyways, because I want that, and I can have it probably, right? I mean, I don't see anything stopping me unless it sells out, so I'll probably get it. But anyway, so one other thing to talk about here, because it does make a lot of sense. The difference between the Edge and the Sky. I've said this before because I did the reviews last year or for the last models and stuff. So let's start with this. the Sky, right? Again, that whole plate placement thing and being a little bit higher, it's made for like people who have a wider stride when you're running, right? So if that's you, then you would want these. If things play out the same way they played out on the last year model, right? When I did this whole thing with these, like the Sky and the Edge of yesteryear, yeah, it was noticeable, right? To me, it was noticeable, right? If I open the stride up for on the edges, didn't feel so great. Do it on the Skies, everything's peachy. And the opposite way going the other way, right? So, anyways, if you have like a wider stride and all that stuff, stick with the Skies. If you're kind of more of like a cadence type runner where you're making more steps but they're shorter and faster, then you would want the Edge, right? And it seems, at least from like me, like when I see people or whatever, it seems like the Edge would suit more people just on average. So if you're not sure, I would say probably the Edge. But that's if you really want one of these. Like if you're just trying to pick one of these because you're an Asics guy, I'm an Asics guy, right? I'm wearing a Nike shirt right now, but it's covered up by this Roosevelt's thing for because it wouldn't match up. But either way, I'm a big Asics guy, but I recognize that not everything they make is going to do the best for everybody, right? Those Hyperion Elite 5s, huge fan of those, right? And I can do both things in them. Same with the Endorphin Elite 2. I can do both things in those pretty well as well. So if you want one shoe that, is just going to fit for you and do whatever you need to do, then you might want to look somewhere else. But that's not to say that you can't do whatever you want to in either of these. They're still high-end shoes. It's still going to do well for you. It's just that if you aren't doing what they're made to do, you're not going to get the best results, right? And then at that point, you're leaving some money on the table because at these things coming in at $270 to me, right? If you're not sure, maybe just get something else, right? Because those other things I just mentioned are around that same price. But that said, though, personally, like I'm more of a Sky person in case you happen to be curious or whatever, because that just kind of works better for me. It's more in line with how I run. I'm not a stranger to like kind of the shorter steps. It depends on like what I'm doing, who I'm running with, all that stuff. But if it's just me and I'm like I've gotten warmed up and all that stuff and I'm ready to like really get some speed, then I'm gonna be like a more of a Sky type situation. That's just kind of how things work. It took some effort to like run in a way that made these work well for me. It's definitely doable and I can see why people do it. But yeah, it's just it felt unnatural for me, whereas it feels natural for others. So that's I guess why they make the two. But anyways, long story short, if you know your style, buy the one that makes sense for your style. If you do not, honestly, even though I'm a big Asics guy, I would still say just buy something else because it might just be better off for you. Anyways, so I think I covered everything, right? I feel like I covered everything. So I'm just going to wrap this up here real quick, do one quick recap and call it a day. So today, picked up the Sky, right? This is the Sky over here. This is the Edge over here. Both of the metaspeed Tokyo variety. So there you go. There's that. I'm sure there will be some other colorways that come around later that make me wish I had waited. But whatever. So I'll be breaking these things out. I already know how they compare to each other. Well, I'll verify, but it'll probably work out the same way it did over here with the Sky and the Edge, right? But the thing that I'm most curious about is how do they work out from last model to this model, right? Because again, Asics is touting this 18% for the Edge and this, or for the Sky, and this 21% for the Edge. I want to know, like, am I going to notice that? I feel like I will. Honestly, feel like better in these because I've heard a lot of good things about this Flight Foam Leap. But sometimes you are just a little skeptical, right? Sometimes things just sound a little too good to be true. But anyways, now we're good. From me to you, have a nice rest of your day or rest of your night, whatever it is, wherever you are. For all the reasons I mentioned moments ago, it'll be a while before you see these reviews trickle out. But the one for this right here, the Prefontaine Pegasus 41s, this one should be soon because it's easy and that makes it easy. So I ran in these last night at a run group just to kind of get my mind back wrapped around how these work out. Very nice. It's kind of like the the Hyperion 2 in a way, where it's kind of a streamlined build, not super cushiony, but it has just enough in it. So when you are running, like, you feel pretty good, but you don't have a whole lot weighing you down or anything. So it does make for some quick days, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles to be like a quick shoe. You know what I mean? So there is that. But I do like them, and they have a pretty decent price point. So there's going to be that. All right. That's everything? Yeah. It's got to be. All right. Thanks for showing up and listening to me talk about shoes and whatever. But, there's more to life, so go do something else. Maybe go outside if it's still early enough. Maybe you have some nice weather, too. We got some nice weather over here. I feel like I should be out there enjoying it or something, but I'm in here doing this, so whatever. All right. Later, people.